the subjects that we're covering tonight is like DPS improvements and stuff like that, like how to pull better damage in raids. The first thing we're going to go over, I covered this in the original workshop a little bit, but I'm going to go a little bit more in depth to it. One of the main things that you're going to want to do when you're trying to figure out how to really pull better damage in raids is plan the fight out. Like, you need to figure out how many times you're going to be able to use your cooldowns. You know, it may not be based off of just the length of the fight, but when you need to use your cooldowns. For example, on, let's say, Archimond. Like, it's normally about a 6.5 minute fight for us, somewhere in there. You know, if I have 2-minute cooldowns like I do on my Ellie with Ascendance and whatnot, it's 2-minute cooldown, I can use it every 2 minutes. Which gives you about 3 times that I can use it in the fight. But, you know, it lines up with the ring also, so that helps me. But, depending on your class, you're going to want to save your cooldowns to line up for big burst moments, potentially on the fight. But it really depends on what your raid team's needing also. Like, if you're needing a big burst moment on, like, any ad, like on Archimond Deathcaller or on Gorefiend, it's not uncommon for you to pop your cooldowns outside of the feast phase in the last one, because generally he's going to be so low that you don't need the extra damage in the feast phase to actually push him to kill him. So it's better to use them to kill all the ads, because that's where the fight really is. It's not on it's not on the feast phase, it's on, you know, controlling the ads and whatnot. But planning your cooldowns through your raid and through your boss encounters is going to really help you. Like, making sure that you're lining them up all at optimal times. And not just your cooldowns, but like your potions, heroism, pretty much anything. Anything that you can stack to get more damage out of your cooldowns is going to help you a lot. So planning out the fight is big. On top of like when you're planning out, you also need to account for things like movement. Like, you can look at your cast times and whatnot, and just take the fight time. Like for Lava Burst, you know, it's an 8-second cooldown. It pops a lot more than that, just because of the way that it works with resetting. But, you know, like a 6-minute fight, you can figure out, if you just straight casted Lava Burst every 8 seconds on cooldown, how many should I have at the end of the fight? And, you know, see if you're hitting near that number or not. I'm not going to do the math right now, because math is not my thing. But, you know, making sure that you're pumping out as much damage from the abilities that are really worthwhile and getting the most amount of cast time in that you can is essentially what you need to be looking at. Like, every single second in a fight matters. Let me see. For example, like, a lot of people end up stutter stepping and whatnot when they're casting. What I mean by that is, if you look at my screen, you'll see I'm casting a healing surge. Oh, well, I'm not in the right spot, so I'm going to move a little bit. So I'm going to move over. Generally, you don't want to do this kind of thing. Like, when you're planning your movements, you need to actually be more precise with them and make sure that you're that you land in a good spot. And even if it's not perfect, as long as it's not catastrophically going to do something bad, you know, as long as you're not going to blow up your raid or knock multiple people up on Archimond or anything like that, stand where you're at and just cast. Like, every time that you interrupt to cast a move, you're losing a lot of time. It may seem like just 1 second, but those seconds add up. Like, in Lava Burst, I'm just using this because it's one of my spells, but, you know, it's a 1.5 second cast. You've lost more than half of that cast by losing that 1 second. So, the more you plan your movements and the better you move, and the less you fidget, which I'm really bad with the fidget at times. Like, if I go back and watch my videos from like our kills and stuff, I'll notice, I was like, what the hell was I doing? Why was I moving here? Like, there was no reason for me to move other than, oh, I just didn't like the specific spot I was in. In reality, moving the whole inch or two over, it was not worth losing that cast, because, you know, you're never getting that time back. Like I said, each fight has a set amount of time, and in that time, you can only get X amount of casts in. So your goal is to make sure that you're meeting that number as often, or as close to it as possible. So anytime that you can, you know, for example, if you have like those 1% wipes, generally, if everyone was thinking of that same mentality, you know, of planning movements better and whatnot, generally those 1% wipes would have been kills. So that when people are telling you, okay, guys, focus, pull your DPS up and whatnot a little bit more, those are things that you can do to actually improve your damage rather than just pray to the RNG gods that you get better luck. Like, if you can actually improve and get 3 extra casts out for each person in your raid from that time, then you're going to get a lot. And yes, melee is a little bit different, but you can still apply the same kind of thing a little bit. Because, for example, Sin, like, if the boss is moving a little bit and you're moving out for whatever reason, if you're not moving with it quick enough and you're missing your melee swings or whatever, it's still a little bit. I'm not going to pretend I know as much about melee with it, but yeah, there's definitely some things you can take from it. I'll probably have somebody here in a week or two or next workshop or whatever, I'll have somebody come in and actually talk about melee aspects of DPS a little bit more at some point here soon. But, I play primarily ranged. But when I do play melee, you can apply some of the same concepts at least. You still have cooldowns or abilities that have a set amount of, duration for how long you can use them. You still want to use the cooldown planning and whatnot like that. So it's not just for ranged with this. Trying to think. Give me 1 second. There's something else I said here. I just don't remember what the hell I said with it. Yeah. Okay. One other thing. Like, there's a lot of times on boss fights. This was one thing that happened back with, on Flamebender, I think it was. Which, this was already something I kind of figured, but it was something that really was more important in that fight. On Flamebender, you have the dogs, especially in Mythic. You have 4 of them that you have to deal with in Blackrock Foundry. And one of the things that we had problems with sometimes on C-Team was if you didn't kill them all within a few seconds of each other, they would resurrect, and you just got into this never-ending cycle where you couldn't get them all dead. They only died if all 4 of them were dead at the same time. So, we would mention, like, start pooling resources and whatnot. This is for, like, rogues, hunters, people with energy, or even, shaman, we have fulmination and whatnot, or even lava burst is on a cooldown. I wouldn't want to use that right before them because I couldn't use it when the wolves come out. So, planning to use resources there, like all your energy or focus, that's kind of what people will talk about there. And that's how you can get more damage on priority targets. Like the Infernals on Archimon, they're both in Mythic and Heroic. But when those are coming out, like if you're getting ready to fight them and they're about to come down, planning that, Death Knights as well, so yes, sorry. Planning to pool those resources to actually unload on them and get your big burst off is essential to actually killing them. Like, it's nearly required. If everybody didn't do that, you probably would never get them down. But, I've been in raids, including our own, where not everyone seems to do that. Like, people don't pool their resources, and not everybody is able to just open up, with big burst on them. Certain classes have different strengths with it as well. Like hunters, they have their aim shot, it's guaranteed to crit or does more damage or whatever above 80%. So it's really important for them to have that focus to aim shot immediately on targets that are coming up that have full health, because they get a big bonus from it and they do a lot more damage to it, so they can dwindle it down a lot quicker. But aim shot without having procs costs a crap ton of focus. So you want to pool those resources for whatever class you're on, so you can make sure that you can actually use your hard-hitting abilities on priority targets. One thing I was going to go back to with movement. Let me actually go back over to training. I realize there's just one over here, but at least the other one's a little bit better. Give me 1 second, I'm about to cough. Cover your ears. Anyway. This is kind of small. But on some fights, like when you're having to move and you're needing to attack targets, you might get ahead of them. Like, this is more of a range thing for sure, but even Death Knights could probably do it with, like, Death Coil or whatever the hell it is you guys have that shoots that little green crap at them. When you're running, if you actually... You can use your momentum, and most people have probably figured this out at some point, but they may not actually apply it to raiding. Like, when you're running, if you're watching my character in a moment, you can jump, and you can still go the same way if you're jumping. Like, it goes the direction that you were moving. So, if you're quick with your mouse and whatnot, like, I'm going to attack this training dummy, but I'm going to be running away from it in a second. When you're running away, you can quickly jump, turn, and turn back, and you can still get a cast off. This is ways that you can actually attack things while you're moving and keeping the momentum in the direction you need to go. It's again, it might seem fancy to some, it probably seems stupid to others, but it's stuff that you can actually do to improve your damage, especially while you're moving. Like, that's where people lose a lot of damage, is movement. For various reasons. Some just don't have anything to cast, or some just have instant casts and whatnot, which, again, ties back into the whole resource pool. If you know you're going to have movement happening soon, save an instant cast or something that you know you're going to have available. Because you got to be able to do something on the move. It may not be the most efficient or the best option, but, you know, if you have, like, a Shaman, Healing Stream Totem, or your Searing Totem, that's a good point to actually use it, because it's an instant cast. It's, you know, it's not the most impressive, but it's still something to do while you're moving. And you're never getting that second back anyway. Make use of it in some way. So while you're, you know, in your runs and whatnot, just, these are different things that you can think about. You know, cooldown planning, resource management, movement times, planning your movement, and just, you know, in general, finding things to do at every second of the fight to make sure that you're contributing something. Because when you're just running away from something and you're not casting anything, you're just dead weight at that moment. You're not doing anything to contribute to the fight, which, while you're learning to fight, it's okay to do that. But when you actually get into the harder stuff in non-mythic and higher difficulties and whatnot, and you're trying to kill a boss for the first time, as you're getting more comfortable with the mechanics, these are things that you need to start applying and doing to make improvements to it. Like, as you get more comfortable with the mechanics, you should start getting more daring to, you know, run and jump and just not play it as safe. Granted, one thing, if you're actually trying the jumping thing, like with momentum and whatnot, be careful on when you do it, because certain bosses and certain mechanics, the game normally doesn't register that you are out of it, like, for example, on Archimon on Mythic, there's like a dance phase, kind of like Hagen from Naxxramas. The ground explodes. If you're jumping and you jump from inside of it, the game doesn't register that you're out of it until you hit the ground on the other side. Like, it still is triggering, or it's still picking you up inside of it, even though you're out of it, until you're on the ground outside of it. So, while that helps to do it so you get more damage, sometimes it's not always the best option. Those are just mechanics that you have to understand and learn if they're going to be safe to do it on or not. At the moment, I'm going to open things up for questions in the chat here on Twitch. So if you have questions, go ahead and ask them in the chat box, please. Like, is there anything that people have, you know, specific problems with certain bosses or anything that they're wondering what they could do better on? Oh, I'm sorry, I'm not a good enough shaman for you. But anyway, there's not a whole lot, like, for discussing this stuff. That was, openers. Oh, yeah, that's a good idea. Okay, so when you're starting a fight, you know, generally you're going to have the most burst possible at the opening of a fight, because all your internal cooldowns and stuff on your trinkets and whatnot generally are available. You know, you don't have to wait for them to come back up or anything when you first start a fight, which is why a lot of people will run, like, heroism at the start of a fight if they're able to, if they don't need it for another part, because you're going to have the strongest burst that you can. I'm not going to go over each class's opener, but that's generally where you're going to get your biggest burst of any fight, is in the opener, especially if you're popping heroism with it. Um, it's really not any different other than your other cooldown times that you combine them all. But when you do start an opener, you're going to notice that you're going to do more damage with it. I don't really know how else to what else to cover with it. But I mean, that's definitely a part where you want to manage your movement better and preferably not move hardly at all if you're able to for that initial opener with your cooldowns and heroes and whatnot. They will currently sin. The Tringus will always proc at the beginning of the fight currently, especially with like the random procs per minute or whatever, because the procs, like the way that they're working right now, it's like, oh, it's been X amount of time since. But from what I've read in Legion, it's actually going to change that, and it's not going to be guaranteed to start the fight with it. It's just going to actually be random from the start of the fight. That's true. That's a good idea, Hagen. With at the start of the fight, you know, the general reason why people do countdowns is if you aren't using two potions in a fight, you can only use one technically once the fight has started and you're in combat. But if you use one of your intellect or strength or agility potions anytime before you've actually engaged the boss, so even 1 second or zero point 0.5 seconds before the boss is pulled, 2 minutes from there, I think it's 2 minutes anyway, you can use another potion. So that gives you, you know, what is it? Potions last for 25 seconds. So that'll give you 23, 24 seconds that you actually do it. Generally, if you're a caster class, you probably want to factor in the cast time that you have, and if your cast has travel time or whatnot. For example, like for me and Ellie, I will normally pre-cast a lava burst to get a stack of whatever the hell it is. I don't know, fusion or focus or whatever that increases my shock damage. So at like 1 second or 2 seconds, I'll pop my potion, and at 1 second, I'll start casting lava burst. And by the time it's actually pulled, the lava burst is traveling through the air and generally hitting him right at 0. And let me go back up here to the question Wise Dude had. When you have multiple things to plan for back to back for resource holding, how do you go from one to another back to back with no downtime in between? Well, like for a hunter, it might be a little hard to do that. You might need to, instead of unloading everything, like if you have any kind of resource builder, like, you know, steady shot for hunter, I don't even know if rogues actually have them. I don't know enough about them. But maybe instead of going 100% on a target, for example, like on Mythic Archimon, there's a point where you have the stars spawn like 4 seconds before the Infernal spawn. Maybe you just do like 2 aim shots, or even 1, in a Chimera, and then you start building back up with steady shot for the rest of it to get it built back up. I mean, you're never going to be able to go full force with it. You have to work within the abilities of your class, obviously. I'm not sure how to best do it. That would be more class specific that you need to pick it for. But I mean, just assess the amount of damage that you're needing and how your group's needing to deal with it is what I would say. You know, if you know that they're going to kill one on the other side or whatever, then just go ham on one of them. But if you know that you're going to need help with multiples, then maybe don't blow everything on that one specific one, or break up cooldowns or something. Like, even though it's good to use your cooldowns all together, maybe on certain fights when you have back-to-back things that you need to kill really quickly, you need to use them at different times. I mean, for example, in Arkham, we use our second potions generally off of our cooldown time. It lines up for some people, but not everybody. So, again, it's fight-by-fight basis that you need to decide that. Let's see, for Manaroth, you said, when he casts Fell Blast, as melee I have to run. How do I control my movement there to not lose DPS? When you say Fell Blast, are you meaning the... Well, the green thing shouldn't really be there. What is the Fell Blast thing? How am I not knowing what this is? It feels stupid. Okay, that's what I thought, Fellseeker. Yeah, I mean, if your group is doing it right, it shouldn't be in melee too much at all. Like, most groups, if it's on Mythic anyway, if it's on Heroic, yeah, it's probably going to be more in the group, and you just have to run away. That's where you might, depending on your class, want to, if you have any kind of gap closer to get back in quicker, or, you know, if you're a warrior, you can charge back in. If you're a shaman, you can use Ghost Wolf with Spirit Walker thingy or whatever. I think it speeds you up. I don't know any answer that well. But it just depends. Like, I mean, in like Mythic, your ranged group should generally be out away from the boss to bait the Fellseeker, so that doesn't happen. But in most heroic groups, you normally don't get that luxury, so you just kind of have to bite the bullet and run from it. The Tartarus, is that the like 12 key thing? I think I know what you're talking about. Yeah. If you want to use the Tartarus thing, you can still strafe on it. You just have to bind one of the keys to Q and E or whatever you use to strafe. Yeah, my partner actually uses one, so I'm kind of familiar with it, and that's one thing that he struggles with sometimes is, you know, it's like he runs out of buttons. Yeah, that might be a part. That's probably where you're losing most of your DPS is like movement and not strafing and whatnot. Like for example, my partner when he's playing, one thing he does that this is one of the reasons why I decided to have this one tonight is, you know, like if the boss is, let me move back over to one of the training dummies. I just run around randomly in my garrison. There we go. But like, let's say the skull is the training dummy. Or yeah, it is the training dummy. Let's say that's the boss or whatever. If, you know, it's getting ready to attack him with something that he needs to run from, he'll actually turn and run like this. Like, his character won't be facing it at all. As long as your character is able to cast still, you're fine. But as soon as you stop being able to cast something while you're moving, that's where you're going to lose a lot of damage. Like, that's arguably the most common thing, especially for players that are new and getting into it, where they're going to lose the most damage and just not... That's where they're going to find themselves making the issues. So if you're doing that, like, it's okay to do it if that's the only way you can survive, but if you're trying to get to a mythic level, you have got to stop doing that, because eventually you're just not going to be as valuable to your group, because you're not going to be able to keep up damage-wise. Like, harder bosses on Mythic, especially while you're progressing on them and you don't have, like, item level boosts and whatnot, you need to be able to contribute every bit of it. You need to be thinking about every single second of every fight, trying to figure out how you can squeeze a little bit more out. Are there any other questions? Let's see if I missed any here. But now, figuring out things with movement is arguably... Like, I mean, moving is easy in this game, but actually learning how to control it for all the different scenarios, I noticed that's where a lot of people have issues, and probably for newer players, that's where they struggle the most, is learning how to really gain full control over their character. And honestly, there are times where I don't even... Like, I know where my character is, but I don't have to pay attention to, like, his actual facing and whatnot. I just know by the angle of my camera and everything where he's facing and the direction I am and whatnot. If you're not at that point, you know, you might still have time that you need to just let your eyes get more accustomed to the game and pick up on subtle things that you're not picking up on right now. But I've been playing this game for years and years and years. You know, I've played since, like, actually raiding since Burning Crusade. And, my eyes are just adjusted to picking up on very subtle things at this point that maybe, you know, people that are just getting into it probably aren't. I'm sorry, I keep sounding kind of awkward. I've got like a stuffy nose and everything right now. Um, but that's actually another thing. Actually, Karkin, I think you actually gave me a good idea there. As you get more used to fights and with your raid team and whatnot, there are certain mechanics that you actually can kind of stand through and whatnot when it's not going to kill you. You know, if you know you guys need a lot of damage at some point and you need to really push it out, then you could actually pop like a cooldown to reduce the damage and know that you're going to live through it and still keep bursting damage if you need on something. Like, that is one way that you can increase damage too. I don't recommend it all the time, especially in pugs and whatnot. Like, your healers might get really pissed off at you, but that is something that you can do to actually boost your damage. And if it's something you don't need to get out of, because you can either immune it, you can take 90% less damage from it, it's not going to kill you at all. And it's hardly going to be noticeable depending on the damage that it's actually doing initially. Give me 1 second. Sorry, right now I'm having a hard time even talking. Like, my nose keeps clogging up and I keep talking weird. Were there any other questions? If not, I'm probably gonna stop for just a moment and get ready for the run in about a half hour. This is different from the fun run. If you know what you're doing on these runs, by all means, go, with the fun run people. But if you're actually looking to learn the fights a little bit more and you need a little bit of guidance, then that's what this run that I'm going to be doing here in a little bit is for. It's not meant, it may not even clear. It's just going to be normal. It's going to be on personal loot. It's just going to be something where if you have questions, it is a safe environment for you to ask and get answers and learn what you're doing. Like, the goal of it is to make sure that you can come out of this not dying to any mechanics, understanding every single thing about it, so you can go to the heroic runs and eventually the mythic runs and get better. So you can progress through the raids and actually through this guild, since we have so many different options. So anyway, I will actually start those in just a few. I'm going to let the fun run invites go out first, and then I'll get mine going. Like, in this run, I've got myself, I've got a few other people, Alari from V Team, I've got Hal from the C Team, and a few others that are coming to kind of watch people and be able to guide them a little bit, give them tips and whatnot to improve. And, I mean, if we have a strong enough group, we will do Heroic. It's just, I want to see what we have and whatnot, and I want to make sure that it's able to actually kill bosses, at least some of them, so people can learn through it. I mean, if you're just on a new character, even, and you're just wanting to learn how to play it a little bit better, that's fine, too. Okay, I'm gonna turn off the stream for just a moment so I can save this part of it as just a highlight, so people can go back and watch it if they want, and then I'll start it back up again for the run in about 10-15 minutes, okay? So it's going to go off for just a few, but if you want to watch or whatever for the run, that's fine as well. If you can't participate for whatever reason, just realize it's going to be back up in a few. So I will catch you all in just a few.